Hola mi gente, welcome to PRIDA's Artist Talk. This is our series where we're featuring Puerto Rican artists and really showcasing their work and highlighting all the wonderful things they want to share with our community. My name is Raesha Cartagena and I'm the board chair for PRIDA, and I look forward to continuing this series. And today we are introducing Maximo Rafael Colón and his wonderful photo exhibition on 125th Street Gallery, and we look forward to sharing more with you within this next half hour. But from your perspective, I'll start from this photo because this is a photo that shows about the struggle, people moving forward, y pa'lante. So if you could tell us a little bit about what this photograph inspires you, or what you think about, and how this adds to all the other photographs that you have, we'd love to know about that.
Okay, well, the theme of the show is La lucha sigue, right? The struggle continues, and it's about, our community, the communities of color, trying to, get a seat at the table. So it's been my goal always since I was a young adult to use my photography in that way, to try to combat those negative stereotypes of our community. The other thing, the important thing about this particular exhibit is that it's a historical exhibit. It talks about struggle from the early 1970s to today. So there are pictures here from 1970 to 2019, 2020. So it's a constant flow, and the emphasis of my work has been that. And I attributed it to my 7th grade teacher, a young African American teacher who's our 7th grade teacher in Brooklyn, in Brownsville, Brooklyn, where I spent 5 years, because we relocated because of urban renewal, like we like to say. And we were witnessing the turmoil, the struggle that was happening in the South in terms of civil rights. So we were, every day, every week, we were on top of what was happening. When they set the dogs on people, when they put fire hoses on them, the civil rights struggle up to also, when Kennedy, I remember when Kennedy got killed, it was, we were in school. So I think it comes from that. It comes from that exposure as a young person. And, during my teens, while I was in high school, I was involved in the anti-war struggle here. Later on, I joined a Puerto Rican organization called El Comité that was advocating for housing and education and healthcare for our community in the West Side. So it's been a constant. And so it's history, and it's important because the gains that our community has gotten, or the gains that anyone in this country has gotten, it's been through a sense of struggle. It hasn't been because, we're going to be nice to you, we're very benevolent, we're going to give you this. And if you read, I'm a real buff about history. If you read about, there's a book called Labor's Untold Story, and it talks about how the workers in the 1930s took over the power plants, the automotive factories and mills, and forced Roosevelt to implement the whole question of unemployment insurance, the whole question of a right to a union, collective bargaining, all those things that people take for granted today were on the basis of those struggles, and people have amnesia sometimes, so I'm here to give them a wake-up call.
As you look back at these photographs, do you recall and remember when you took them? Do they give you different types of feelings when you actually look back on, because sometimes many years have passed, like you said, it could be 1975, it could be 1995.
Right.
But when you look at these photographs, what kind of story do you feel it was trying to tell?
Well, I have a good memory, so I remember a lot of different things about the photographs. Like This particular photograph here, you see their police here, the confrontation with the police, and this is the flag. This is a big flag that usually would be at the demonstrations and parades. It's a huge Puerto Rican flag. And here the police are trying to take it away from us. This is Huracan over here. I don't know if he was in PRSU or he was in the Lords, but they're trying to take the flag away from us. And this was a struggle that we waged against the organizers of the Puerto Rican Day Parade back in the 1970, and it was the whole question of letting the progressive movement, the movement of independence, participate in the parade. So they refused to let us to participate, so we struggled and bogarted, and so we had this confrontation with the police. The following year, in 1972, they allowed the independence movement to march. So that's what that is. There's a funny story, no, it's not funny. Huracan here and another compañero from the movement, we were at this demonstration in the Bronx, up on Willis Avenue and 138th Street. And this particular photograph, this is Richie Paris, who was a member of the Young Lords. There's another Lords over here. These cops over here, undercover cops, try to provoke a situation. So you see Richie here with his hands, like trying to stop people from messing them up. So when this happened, somebody we were marching, somebody from the group, some provocateur threw a Molotov cocktail at a bank. And there, everybody just ran. And I remember I ran with Huracan and my other compañero from the movement, Cano, and we ran, and Cano had a pair of nunchuck sticks, threw them under a car, and we ran by the Teatro Puerto Rico, So those are kinds of things, This photograph here, these are some members of my organization that I belong to, El Comité. And this was Colombia students, people that were advocating for housing and the community. We were marching to a demonstration this is 106. This is Emilio, this is Connie. Consuelo, she became a carpenter. She got involved in getting training, getting into the union, the carpenters union. So, and he was an usher at my wedding in 1970. He became a doctor, and at one point he became the head of the Health and Hospitals Corporation. Un cubano, un amigo mío.
Now, if you see how things have changed, you talk of a period of about 40 years. When you look and you're talking to people who are coming to see the exhibit, how do you feel your photographs have changed, but how has history or how things have evolved in our community, because you started out fighting, for the social justice, advocacy for the community, the people, children, families. Have you seen that change evolve? Like, was it something that you were able to capture over a period of 10, 15, 20 years? Like, did you see that change, or did you see it just gradually stay where it was until?
No, in terms of access and services to the community, to this day, if you come from Kazakhstan and you're in a hospital or you're in an agency and you don't speak the language, interpreters and interpretation services are provided, and forms are in all kinds of languages. I mean, if you look in the subway, you'll see, it says, there's no service. It's in like maybe 3 or 4 different languages now. That wasn't like that before, and that was due to, the struggle that our community waged early on. So we don't make any advances unless we struggle.
Absolutely.
And right now, there's this move by, the people in power here who want to try to limit our right to vote, limit our access to the legislative process and everything else that it involves, And if we don't fight that, then, things are not going to change. So it's always a constant struggle. And
I like this. When they talk about now, they talk about Jim Crow and black codes and things that happen in the South. This is a nice, your artist statement. Tell me a little bit about this one.
Well, this is how I was formed. This is basically my DNA as a person of conscience, as a person that struggles, and these are some of the influences. And I talk about my idyllic Caribbean slumber. When I came here in the late '50s, I didn't know anything about racial conflicts. There was, I lived in the country. I walked barefooted in Ciales. So to come here and the most shattering thing is that there's hardly any green spaces. I grew up in the campo, and here there's none of that. So that's, I talk about that, how I came here and then, being exposed to the civil rights struggle, how it opened my eyes. And the other influences in my life, Frantz Fanon, if you read his White Skins, Black Mask, and if you read The Wretched of the Earth, which we studied, so those are things that nurtured me, fed me, and made me the person that I am today.
How do you feel that affects other artists today that are from other places and they come here, especially Puerto Rican artists? Because Puerto Rico is still a place, a commonwealth, not yet a state. We don't want it to be a state. Some people say yes, other people say no. But for you being the Puerto Rico, Puerto Rican, how do you feel other artists might feel coming here today? They seem to have experienced and still experiencing the same struggles that you did to get assimilated, to find a place for themselves. That's why organizations like PRIDA is really trying to help Puerto Rican artists to stay relevant and people know who they are. Do you feel that your work can help other artists learn from their past to be the future?
It's a documented history, and not that they would learn that, wow, these things happen. And also that's how this came about.
Right.
So that's why, I make it my business to be, receive people here to explain some of the photographs, the context, and how did that come about. We have a photograph in the corner here where it says Fuentes.
Where is it over here?
Yeah.
Over here? Which one?
This photograph here.
Okay.
Fuentes exige que maestros enseñen, right? And this was the struggle for bilingual education in the Lower East Side. And Fuentes was the school board director director in the Lower East Side. And he was trying to let the union, hire native speakers. Don't bring somebody that doesn't know the culture, doesn't know, they think they know the language, but they don't know the nuances of our community. So that's what he was advocating for. So, the struggles like that. This photograph here, this is the Operation Moving, and these were people that were living under horrible conditions in dilapidated buildings, and were starting to, take over buildings and fix them and force the city to acknowledge that there was a problem with the housing. I had two dear friends visiting the show today, Elizabeth and Mike, who were instrumental in providing the opportunity for me to document some of the music scene at the Copacabana, at Salsa Mis Jazz, and it was through their intervention that I was able to get access, so I am deeply indebted to them. And in the photographs here, we have a few poets, and this is part of what they call the Nuyorican Poets Movement. And first and foremost, we want to introduce Jorge Brandon, and his moniker was El Coco que Habla. And he basically recited poetry in Spanish in the Lower East Side, with an impeccable diction. It was a pleasure to see him recite on some street corner. And this is him right here. Much love to him. And then, he fed and nurtured some of these other poets. And this is Pedro Pietri, a very important poet. and who has this very important poem that you can apply. You can change the names, and it could be to any immigrant that comes to this country. It's called a Puerto Rican obituary, and every time I hear it, I want to cry because it's such a powerful poem. But like I said, you could change the names, and it could be applied to any immigrant group that comes to the United States. And this is Tato Laviera here with Americo Casiano, another poet, very important. Wrote plays, did festivals. This is also Lucky Cienfuegos, contemporary of Miguel Piñero. And over here you have Bimbo Rivas, who is credited with creating the name Loisaida in the Lower East Side, combining Loíza and the Lower East Side to create a new. And if you go down Avenue C, I think C or D, you'll see it says Loisaida.
To know Tato Laviera personally, and it's because he was the one who named a club back in the 80s called Ochentas, and he's the one who gave it the name. Not to mention his sister, Ruth Sanchez. They used to do everybody's hair back in the days. But Max's pictures are always intriguing to me, and I always ask him, I just did that earlier, how do you pick the picture for one of your exhibits? I try my best not to miss any of them, whether it's here or in Puerto Rico. And he says it's just the theme and the feeling he gets, and you could tell he put his whole heart and soul into it.
Impressed with Max's work. I met Max through my wife Liz, and every time I see an exhibit of his, it's always fulfilling, remembering of the past and our future, which is right here, what we have to do with our youngsters, this younger generation. It's all right here.
First and foremost, I have to give thanks to my family who supported my work through all these years. The very people that are very dear to my work and my life. I also want to thank La Marqueta Retorna because they offered me the opportunity to put this exhibit together, and of course, Positive Workforce, who provided the space. So I am deeply indebted to them, and I want to give them my deepest and profoundest gratitude. Muchas gracias.